As we all know, nanoparticles have several kind of applications in field of nanomedicine as well as biomedical applications. So there are some properties, there are certain properties which makes the nanoparticles to be useful in these kinds of fields. Just like when a material comes at a nanoscale, its certain properties change, just like its surface to volume ratio, reactivity, which makes the nanoparticles more attractive in these kinds of fields. And along with these useful applications, nanoparticles, due to these changed properties, have also adverse effects, and those adverse effects are referred as nanotoxicology. Means it is the field, it is the study of the toxicity of the nanomaterials. So we can say that nanotechnology is a double-edged sword. That means same novel properties making nanoparticles attractive makes them potentially toxic too. So nanotechnological studies are intended to determine whether or to what extent these properties may pose a threat to the environment as well as to human beings. Due to the positive and beneficial properties of the nanoparticles, there are number of products in the market which uses nanoparticles in their composition. For example, there are various cosmetic products which use nanoparticles. There are various types of displays which use carbon nanotubes. Structural nanocomposites were also used in several types of vehicles also. In case of fibers, nanocore fabrics is used. So there are number of types of products available in the market. And when we use these kind of products which contain nanoparticles in their composition, suppose we are using a cosmetic, we are washing our face, and the nanoparticle containing cosmetics ultimately goes to water bodies. So the nanoparticle is now transferred to the water body. So it may affect the water, the aquatic life, as well as number of other adverse effect it can cause. Means we are using the nanoparticles for our beneficial purpose, and ultimately it is going to cause number of adverse environmental factors. As we all know that at nanoscale the properties of matter is going to be changed, just like its color, chemical reactivity, etc. Means the same materials has different types of properties in case of its bulk phase as well as nano phase. So here is a common example of man applying face mask of zinc on his face. That means look at this picture. At the right side of face he is applying the bulk zinc material which is white and opaque, while the left side of the face is covered with zinc which is transparent. So this is a common example of changed properties of nanoparticles from its comparatively to its bulk phase. So similarly, nano gold can be red or blue. Carbon nano tubes can conduct electricity. Means along with the applications of nanoparticles, there are also new risks which are going to be arised due to their toxicity. Practically there are number of companies worldwide which use nanomaterials in their products. Some of the common examples of few companies are such as Kraft, Nestle, Unilever, Pepsi, etc. These are using nanoparticles in their products. So what happens next? We are going to consume anyhow these products. When we consume these products, they, including their beneficial properties, they can also exert some toxic effects to ourselves. Means those properties which are making them special may be also responsible for their toxic effects over our body. For example, some of the common nano products which are practically available in the market today are sunscreens, cosmetics, deodorants, as well as personal care equipments, textiles and clothes, paint and furnitures. Everyone is using nanomaterials or nanoparticles due to their applications. Along with these products, there are growing number of nano food products also. In early 2008, it has been identified by the FOE that there are total 104 food products, food additives, as well as food contact materials, kitchen products, and agricultural inputs that rely on the nanomaterials. Some studies also shown that there are around 150 to 500 nanofoods are available worldwide. In case of agriculture also, with the help of the use of nanoparticles, there will be a more uniform, fully automated, industrialized, as well as reduced to simple functions kind of agricultural industry will going to be arise in future with the help of these nanoparticle use. So we are watching now that how nanoparticles are going to affect our life in future as well as practically today. Means each and everything we are going to observe the use of nanomaterials in our daily life products, which are anyhow going to cause some toxic effects to ourselves as well as environment, as there are number of products which do not mention that what amount of nanoparticles has been used in their products, as well as what kind of nanoparticles they are going to use or they have used in their products. They only mention that nanoparticles has been used. So those amount of nanoparticles used by the industries as well as companies, different types of companies, may affect some toxic effects to ourselves. For example, a US based company, Nanoceuticals, is using Slim Shake chocolate. Means it is a diet milkshake which uses silica nanoparticles coated in cocoa clusters just to increase the taste with low cocoa as well as sugar content. But health risk of nanosilica is remain poorly understood. So early studies suggest there is a need for caution to understand the toxicity of the silica nanoparticles. So the future nano food as well as agricultural industry using nanoparticles will be more interactive and provide personalized foods, more nutraceuticals. Means they can provide more nutrients with the help of nanoparticles use, edible nano wrappers as well as coating, chemical release packaging, etc. There means there are number of fields which are going to use the nanomaterials for their beneficial kind of use in their products. Even they are not going to understand, or even they are not understanding the toxicity of the nanomaterials, that how they can be toxic to our body. So there is a much need to understand the nanotoxicology. Means to understand that how much quantity of the nanoparticle we are going to take, we are going to consume, which are not toxic to our body. As nanotechnology could enable junk food to be fat, sugar and carbohydrate reduced, as well as there will be more vitamin, protein as well as fiber enhanced diet is possible due to the use of nanoparticles, and then it is further going to be marketed as a healthy alternative. We have also studied in the earlier slides that use of nanomaterials in the field of agriculture is will result in a automated nano surveillance as well as management systems, which ultimately results in reduction of need for the farm workers, as well as the farmers are going to use the fully automated procedure, it will affect their knowledge of farming too. Along with the number of beneficial effects, nanoparticles are also responsible for posing new toxicity risks, as they are going to be inhaled or ingested, or some of the nanoparticles can even cross the skin. Comparatively with the larger particles or bulk materials which are unable to cross the skin, these nanoparticles are going to cross the skin barrier also, as they are very small in size, and sometimes inhaled nanoparticles are also responsible for crossing the blood brain barrier. Even most of the drugs used these times are unable to cross the blood brain barrier, but these nanoparticles are going to cross them easily and ultimately cause some toxic effect to the body. Now coming to the toxicity of the nanoparticles, previous studies have already shown the toxicity of the nanoparticles. Just like silver nanoparticles is proved to be toxic to rodent liver, brain as well as stem cells, and may be harmful to bacteria. While the nano zinc oxide is toxic to rat and human cells even at very low doses. Similarly, nano silicon dioxide, which is smaller than 70 nanometer, can cause onset of pathology similar to neurodegenerative disorders. Similarly, nano titanium dioxide is responsible for damaging the DNA in human cells, as well as it can harm algae and water fleas, especially with UV light exposure. Now coming to the food products, the nanoparticles in case of food products are able to distort our immune system response. They can act as a Trojan horses, smuggling foreign substances into the cells. Additionally, they are also responsible for causing different types of diseases, for example, irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, as well as Crohn's disease. When used in the food products, when we consume these nanoparticles in food products, then we are going to develop IBS as well as Crohn's disease when these nanoparticles are not in the proper amount. So to tackle with these kind of toxic effects of nanoparticles which are used in food additives and other products, the oldest scientific institution has already provided some guidelines. For example, UK Royal Society recommended in 2004 has provided some guidelines, that is the full safety assessment of all products that contains nano prior to market release, as well as all nano ingredients needs to be labeled there, as well as environmental release of nanoparticles to be avoided as far as possible, because the release of nanoparticles to the environment after or use means if you are using any kind of products available in the market which rely on the nanoparticles, ultimately those nanoparticles are going to be released in the environment, resulting in toxic effects. Because the same properties of nanoparticles which are going to make them beneficial is responsible for making them potentially harmful, such as enhanced reactivity, increased surface to volume ratio, enhanced permeation, as the properties are going to change at nanomaterial scale or nanoscale. Just like there are some elements or some materials which are inert at their bulk phase, but coming to the nanoscale they are going to become highly active. So coming to the part of exposure scenarios, there are various substances in the world, means in case of nanoparticles, which are toxic to plants, animals, as well as humans at some exposure levels. So there are basically two routes of exposure mentioned in the slide. That is, one is short term routes involving inhalation in gas phase, skin contact in solution, as well as oral ingestion. Additionally, the other route is long-term routes involving soil adsorption, water dissolution, as well as biodegradation issues. Means in case of long-term routes, the nanoparticles can be bioaccumulated to the body tissues, or means they are gradually increasing their levels in the body with respect to time. So there are various kinds of nanotechnology issues arise due to the use of nanoproducts. So for example, the risk evaluation for exposure to nanotechnology product is hindered by the law protected secrecy of product formulations, which includes the lack of specific regulations on nanotechnology, non-mandatory reports on toxicity of products, old criteria as well as methods becoming obsolete. So here is a picture in which the researchers from the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health determine the concentration of nanoparticles in the air while unloading a reactor for producing metal oxide nanoparticles. So the use of nanomaterials in our basic environment, in our practical use, is ultimately going to increase the nanotechnology issues. So international initiatives have been taken to tackle with these kind of issues which are going to be arise with the use of nanoparticles. Recently there are some agencies that have taken some actions to establish regulations to nanotechnology. For example, International Standard Organization, US National Nanotechnology Initiative, British Standard Institute, Environmental Protection Agency. All these agencies have published reports as well as guidelines related to the handling of nanomaterials and the research approach to nanotoxicology. On coming to the methodology of toxic effects of nanoparticles to the environment, first look at this picture. This person is handling carbon nanotubes. It is looking like he is handling around 50 to 60 kilograms of some material in the plastic bag, but it is only 100 grams of carbon nanotubes he is carrying in the plastic bag. So now the question arises that how we are going to test the toxicity of a nanomaterial. So keeping in mind there are various list of measures which are kept in mind for testing the toxicity, such as duration and route of exposure of the nanoparticles, dosage and formulation of test material, references and standard materials for comparisons, as well as biological species to be subjected to the tests. Now, for meaningful results on the toxicity of nanomaterials, there are various possible conditions of exposure of the nanoparticle. Means how we are going to expose to the nanoparticles. There are two routes, that is accidental or introduced. So in accidental route, the nanoparticle may enter in our body with the help of via the environmental contamination or workplace exposure, or they can be introduced in our body with the help of medicines, means with the help of nanomedicines, the medicines which are coated with nanoparticles. So the two routes are either accidental, in which we inhale the nanoparticles, or through the environmental factors we are going to ingest the nanoparticle, in which we are going to be exposed accidentally to the nanoparticles, or they may be introduced for some beneficial purpose, for example nanomedicines. But both kind of exposures are able to result in some kind of toxicity in our body. For example, here the toxic effects of carbon nanotubes is identified in rats. In this procedure, the rats were instilled with high doses of single wire carbon nanotubes, which ultimately results in the respiratory blockage rather than the pulmonary intoxication. But here the results of the study has shown that there is some kind of inflammation and no cytotoxic effect. That is the picture in the micrograph that has been shown in the slide, that is micrograph of lung tissue. It is the picture shows that the respiratory airways are mechanically blocked by the carbon nanotubes, but there are no cytotoxic effects. There is only inflammation of the cells. In the second test, the rats were exposed to air contaminated with carbon nanotubes. In this, the air is contaminated with low concentration of carbon nanotubes, and the exposure is 6 hours per day, and the whole time period of this exposure is 14 days. Afterwards, the tracking of the proteins as well as immune response has been recorded or analyzed. Here the results of inhalation of carbon nanotubes in rats have clearly shown that there is a immune suppression. So the methodology used, which is going to lead to different conclusions on the toxicity of carbon nanotubes, several criteria must be used to select the meaningful results. Now the question arises that what test stimulates a more realistic exposure? Are these results applicable to all nanotubes? Our exposure concentration is realistic, and do animal subjects respond similar to humans? So the answer to these questions will result in the determination that the carbon nanotubes are safe or unsafe for our use. Or ultimately we can determine the cytotoxic effects of carbon nanotubes. Now the test of the cytotoxicity relies on the three primary tests, which are going to be in vitro, in vivo, or ex vivo. That is, in vitro, that is you testing in the lab scale, in vivo testing on animals, and ex vivo testing on both, that is on lab scale as well as the use of animals. But for the use of animals for in vivo testing, an ethical certificate is required. So the tests which we are going to use for the cytotoxicity or cytotoxic test needs to be cost effective as well as time effective, as well as no ethical issues are involved in those tests. Means if you are testing on an animal, a proper ethical certificate is needed. Several studies have also concluded that the response to the nanoparticles is too diverse. For instance, dogs and pigs have a higher immune response to nanoparticles. So there are 4 basic pillars of testing, which includes formulation, test, methods, as well as subjects. Now the first pillar involves formulation, which includes which type of nanoparticles are going to be tested. Means it is silver nanoparticle, carbon nanoparticle, gold nanoparticle, or zinc nanoparticle. Means type of the nanoparticles is considered, as well as their concentration, pH, etc. Is also being considered. While the test involve in vitro testing, in vivo testing, as well as ex vivo testing as discussed earlier. Now the tests include exposure mode, exposure time, targeted organ which we are on which we are going to test the nanoparticle toxicity, and at last the subjects, that is animal. There are number of examples of improved in vitro testing methods. For example, here is an example in which there is a substitution of 2D in vitro assays for 3D ones, which ultimately increases the accuracy of the test. In 3D assays, because 3D assays could potentially reproduce better 3D structures of the cells in case of in vivo test. In this, different white circles which are represented at pores are created in a hydrogel matrix using a colloidal crystal template. The 5 micrometer spheroid liver cells that are gray in color are grown in the scaffold structure, forming a 3D network of cells. Ultimately, the dead cells are identified with red color after a staining assay. As shown in the figure, it has been observed, we can clearly observe that in case of 3D structure, that there is much more death rate as compared to the in 2D structure of the tissues, as shown right here. Other testing strategies, that is alternative methods for test, include ab initio simulations, as the toxicity of nanoparticles depends on its physical, chemical interactions with gases, liquids, and other nanoparticles surrounding them. So these things can be studied using molecular simulations too. Now coming to the study of genotoxicity, firstly I would like to describe what genotoxicity is. So in case of cytotoxicity, when anything is toxic to cells, it is known as cytotoxic. And when any compound or any material or anything is toxic to the genetic material, that is DNA, then it is referred as genotoxic. Means genotoxicity refers to the ability of a test agent to induce DNA damage. So the genotoxicity assay is a testing method to detect, quantify, as well as characterize the DNA damage induced by a substance under investigation. These methods are indicators for likely carcinogenic agents. And the substance which is responsible for DNA damage are referred as genotoxin. As in the figure, it is clearly shown that indirect mechanisms can lead to genotoxicity. Means nanomaterials may result in oxidative stress or inflammatory responses that in turn have the potential to damage DNA and alter the transcriptional mechanisms or patterns. And the oxidative stress resulted by the entry of or the effect of nanoparticles results in the inflammation as well as generation of reactive oxygen species also, which ultimately alters the mode of or action mechanism of nuclear or activates the nuclear factor kappa B, resulting in DNA damage and various other diseases. As we all know that oxidative stress is also, previous studies have also shown that oxidative stress is also responsible for development of cancer also, because the activation of nuclear factor kappa B is responsible for the inflammation which is ultimately resulted by the increased oxidative stress as well as increased ROS levels in the body or in the cell. Now for the genotoxicity test, a nanomaterial or a toxic chemical is introduced in a mammalian cell as shown in the figure. The extreme left part of the figure shows no effect of nanoparticles on the chromosomes, that is it indicates that it has no cytotoxic effects, while in the middle it has shown some chromosomal aberration which indicates that it has abnormal cell growth as well as tumorigenic effect. And at last, the extreme right of the figure shows that there is a breakage in the double strand of DNA, which indicates cell death or cell division and cell proliferation. So here is a list of various cytotoxic methods which are used to perform the cytotoxic effect or cytotoxic test, which includes Ames assay, Comet assay, MTT uptake assay, etc. So firstly, let's talk about Ames test. In this test, the possible mutagen, which might be nanoparticle or any other compound, is inserted into the solution containing rat liver extract as well as Salmonella strain. As we can see in the lower part, there is no introduction of possible mutagens. Both the plates are incubated with media containing minimal histidine, and as a result we can observe that a high number of revertants, histidine negative or histidine positive, suggests that the mutagen causes mutations, that is the nanoparticle is causing mutation, while in the other plate there are no natural revertants present, which indicates that no mutations are observed, as there are no possible mutagens in this petri dish or media. Now coming to the hemocompatibility assay, it is a very important factor to decide the application of implantable biomaterials such as artificial blood vessels and orthopedic implants. That is, in this assay, with the help of this assay, we can check the compatibility with the blood. As we know, with the development of a blood contacting material or implantable devices, it is necessary to improve the hemocompatibility by surface modification or redesign. So hemocompatibility assay or hemocompatibility test of nanomaterials contains various types of assays such as hemolytic assays, anticoagulant assays, platelet adhesion and activation assays, blood coagulation time assays, blood protein adsorption assays. Now coming to the part of blood collection, means we need to collect blood for testing. Then they can be either from human or animal. The blood is collected. If it is collected from the humans, then an ethical permission is required to collect the blood. The blood is further mixed with tripotassium EDTA, which is an anticoagulant which prevents the blood from clotting. So the further platelet adhesion test involves isolation of platelet-rich plasma from human or animal blood. So firstly the blood is collected and kept in a tube with the anticoagulant. After that it is centrifuged at 1300 rpm for 10 minutes at 4 degrees centigrade to separate the blood plasma, which is further going to be used in the test. So like here in the figure, if we want to check the toxicity of the polymer thin film, then it has been cut into circular disc in minor compartments and further treated with UV light at the duration of for the duration of 30 minutes, and further it is placed into 96 well plate. After that, at the same compartments of the 96 well plates in which previously the polymer thin film was added, now the isolated platelets are added to that 96 well plate and incubated for 30 minutes at 37 degrees centigrade, followed by the removal of non-adhered pellets, and ultimately the final slide or the final plate is going to be viewed under the microscope. Then we will obtain two results: either we have adhered pellets or the pellets are activated. If the pellets are adhered, it means that there is no release of coagulation factors and the material is ultimately good for the implant. And if we get the result that shows that pellets are activated, which refers that there is more release of coagulation factors, it means that the material is not good for the implant. And now I think that you all are clear about nanotoxicology term. So thanks for watching.